Hiya! Welcome! Minidisc Monday number 55 is here with you today, and of course this is the fourth and penultimate edition of Britpop month within MD Monday. We've been looking at Britpop artists and their albums all throughout December, and we've got to 1999 in the timeline now, and an album that I doubt a lot of people watching this have ever listened to, and this is only the second time I've listened to it. I'm talking about Only the Strongest Will Survive by Hurricane Number 1.
And it can't be so hard to know when to try, when to give up and go. Now this feeling is reeling me in. I can feel it like it was my skin. In my head I'm repeating the rule. Pain is easy, pleasure is cruel. I tell you, only the strongest will survive. These days you've gotta kill yourself just to stay alive. Well, there's only one life, and you know it won't take.
So this came out on Creation Records in 1999, a good year or more after the single of the same name. That came out back in spring 98, and I remember that because I had that single, Only the Strongest Will Survive, and I played it to death on the final weeks of college radio that I was working on. So, bit of a delay with this album, not sure why. It was the second and final studio album from Hurricane Number 1 for many years, although Alex Lowe, the vocalist, did reform the band I think around 2014, 2015, and they've released some albums since then, but it's basically been Alex Lowe and a completely different lineup. The most famous member of Hurricane Number 1, of course, is Andy Bell, who was the guitarist and songwriter in this incarnation, and he had previously been in Ride and would go on to, of course, be the bassist for Oasis. So, with a little potted history, very potted, of the band out the way, let's take a look at the packaging and the disc. The case, holding together pretty well, kind of scuffed and scratched up, but, you know, these plastic cases, what do you do? Looks fine on the back. Album artwork in this rather underwhelming insert, I have to say, it just folds out a little bit. And we've got track listing, some production stuff, a little bit of legal bump. There's a credit for Alan McGee there, who of course was running Creation Records at the time. And that's pretty much it regarding the insert. Of course the disc, these lovely little things here. Artwork on that side, and not very much at all on the other side. The artist and album name, the catalogue number, and telling you to look at the inlay for more details. This is the only Hurricane Number 1 album I've ever owned or heard. I certainly class it as a Britpop album. Hurricane Number 1, I think their previous album came out around 96, 97, self-titled I believe that was, and it did fairly well. This didn't do very well at all. I think number 55 it peaked at in the album charts in the UK. The previous 3 albums we've looked at this month all got to number 1 and sold in droves, whereas this one kind of expedited Hurricane Number 1 split. They would have gone their separate ways not too long after making this album, probably out of, and I'm assuming really, but sheer disappointment that this kind of flopped. And I think that's a shame, because really they were taking Britpop, or rather indie guitar music, in an interesting direction really with this album. There's a lot of drum loops on it, synthesizers, samples, but it still retains that kind of indie alternative rock sound and credibility really. So to go through the tracks, number 1 is an intro, it's kind of standard instrumental, setting the scene sort of thing. Track 2, NYC, that was kind of a bog standard indie rock track really. sort of felt a little bit half-arsed to me. Not the worst track I've ever heard, but certainly one of the weaker ones on the album for me. Then track number 3 is The Greatest High. I think that came out as a single, which did very poorly. You will have seen some chart positions, hopefully, on screen earlier on. Good track that, I really like that. I don't remember hearing it back in the day. Very similar to the title track, which is coming along soon. Some might say it's a little bit of a copy of it, but it was just different enough, really, for me to think that that was a decent song in its own right. So yeah, The Greatest High, I did enjoy that. Similarly with Remote Control, there again, this sort of dance motifs and electronic big beat stuff at times coming into some of this stuff. It's making this album a little bit different from sort of their contemporaries at the time, and Remote Control I think may have been another single that did nothing, but it was a good track on here. Track number 5, The Price That We Pay. Number 6, Separation Sunday. Nothing wrong with either of those, enjoyed both of them. Number 7, Rising Sign. I think that was a 4th single. I'm not sure of the order of the singles from the album, but that was one of 4. And track number 8 is the title track. As I say, I did have the CD single that came out in sort of early 1998. I think well over a year before this album actually came out. Slightly different version on the album that's on the single, but the album version is great. One of my favourite singles of the year, if not the whole 90s, Only the Strongest Will Survive. I do think Hurricane Number 1 blotted their copybook somewhat by letting that be used in TV ads for the Sun tabloid. Yeah, there wouldn't be a big enough amount of money to pay me to let some piece of work of mine be used by the scum. But it doesn't change the fact I love the song, and it even made me tolerate a Sun ad for 30 seconds when it came on TV. Definitely the standout of the album, and remains a brilliant single. It got top 20, probably should have done better really, but I don't think Creation were really that arsed about throwing much promotion behind Hurricane Number 1 really, compared to other acts they had on the roster at the time, such as Oasis and Primal Scream. Number 9, Long Way Down. Number 10, Twilight World. Number 11 is Come Alive. Some good stuff here. I haven't really got an awful lot that I can speak specifically about it really. I don't remember whether I even liked this album or not the first time I heard it many years ago. I've probably picked this Minidisc up very cheaply somewhere, but I certainly enjoyed listening to it again. Alex Lowe's vocals are pretty good. I think in some of the earlier tracks on here he sounds a little bit too much like Kelly Jones from Stereophonics, and I'm not a Stereophonics fan at all. But on other things, most of the album, to be fair, he's got his own voice. Andy Bell was the lyricist. I think he wrote all or almost all of the tracks on here, and obviously he'd earned his stripes in Ride, probably almost a decade previously. Track number 12, What Do I Know? And track number 13 is a lovely penultimate track, After Hours, and it's more of a gentler kind of song. Still indie guitar, still with some sort of electronica motifs in there, but the backing vocals were provided by Andy Bell's then partner. And ends with track 14, Outro / NYC2. So I was expecting sort of a reprise of NYC, which I guess it was, but it was totally different really. It's a very bongo drum led version of NYC, and an instrumental version as well, and didn't really resemble the first version of it, track number 2, at all. And then, as has been the case a couple of times during these reviews this month, you have to skip on a while for a hidden track. What is it about indie bands of this era and putting hidden tracks on albums? It seemed to be a bit of a fetish really. It went on a little bit, but it started really nicely. It seemed to be an instrumental of Only the Strongest Will Survive, played on the Moog organ with a hip-hop beat behind it. And then it kind of segued into more of a rather overlong, but nice enough, down-tempo, big beat sort of thing really. And that was Only the Strongest Will Survive by Hurricane Number 1. You know, I applaud Hurricane Number 1 here. They took a gamble, it didn't pay off, but they were trying to take indie guitar music in a new direction. And while it might be debatable as to whether you can call this a true Britpop album, as they formed and released much of their material during that Britpop era of the mid to late 90s, you know, I'm including it this month, This is a good album, and I think it's probably gone under a lot of people's radar. If you can seek this out on some format or another, no doubt very cheap on CD. I don't even think it was that expensive on Minidisc, but obviously I could be wrong on that now, and this might be valued a bit higher on the aftermarket, but you could stream it as well, I suppose. However you want to listen to it, I do recommend this. I really enjoyed this, and I'm surprised that I didn't remember how much I enjoyed it the first time, but perhaps I didn't enjoy it that much the first time, but I certainly did a lot more this time round. Hurricane number 1 there. So that was the 4th of 5 Minidisc Mondays this month to celebrate Britpop month. I want to wish all my supporters, my viewers, subscribers, etc. a very happy Christmas, and thank you all today for watching this edition of Minidisc Monday. Have a great Christmas, everybody. I'm going to go now, and I'll be back after the big day in a week's time for the final edition of Britpop month here on Minidisc Monday, and the final edition in 2025 as well, of course. Cheers, everyone. See ya!